one of the meetings of NAL's Research Advisory Council in the mid-1980s, Professor Satish Dhawan asked if NAL could design and build a light transport aircraft. The idea was tremendously exciting and triggered off intense discussion.
Doing civil aviation in India, civil aeronautics project, was something which the three of us discussed very often, Dhawan, myself and Rajnath. So when finally NAL started on this project, it was the realization of dreams that we had been constantly discussing for a very long time. Actually, I think for 10 years at least.
Professor Narasimha asked Dr. K. Yagna Narayan to lead the project.
I first got into the civil aviation program and the light transport aircraft, as it was called those days, in 1989, when the Research Council asked NAL to do a feasibility report, and the then director, Professor Narasimha, asked me to head the team. So I've been involved since the very beginning, from 1989 onwards.
Mr. Raj Mahendra, a very capable aircraft designer, joined NAL's aircraft design team.
Civil aviation and the wish to do something for the country was the driving force behind Raj Mahendra after he retired from HAL and became a consultant in NAL. And in the initial years, he really pushed us. I think, as a matter of fact, his presence here over the crucial 5 or 6 years was instrumental in convincing everybody that this is a program which NAL can do and should do in fact.
The project team went about its task systematically. A meeting was organized at NAL to seek inputs from air taxi operators. Professor Dhawan himself chaired this meeting. It soon became clear that a multi-role transport aircraft offered the best prospects. A turboprop was preferred to a turbojet.
But we're looking at a multi-role aircraft where on one end we have a 4th-level feeder service where we do 300 kilometers, 350 kilometer hops. And these are the kind of mixed profiles where turbojet will be very inefficient. Turboprop is ideal candidate for that. So we are looking at the lower end of the business market and a variety of other roles, including roles like air ambulance, aerial surveillance and all that. But turboprop is ideally suited.
The Indian domestic airline market had already started growing impressively. Market surveys commissioned in 1990-91 indicated that about 150 to 200 transport aircraft in various roles would be required in the next 15 years. Within a year, NAL prepared a detailed feasibility report on the proposed light transport aircraft. NAL's dream was beginning to take a concrete and exciting shape.
A specification is given by the user. So he says, I want a plane of this size, so many passengers, such and such a range, such and such speed, endurance and so on. So we have some kind of a ballpark specification around which you build an airplane. Whereas in our case, we had to evolve the specifications also. So once we had the specifications right, then we do a preliminary design, where we decide what is the type of engine, how many engines, what is the power required, what is the size of the airplane, what is the initial weight breakdown, what is the initial performance, and then start refining as we go along.
Sadly, it was still very difficult to sell a civil aircraft development project in the early 1990s.
There was no project which the government would grant entirely. So raising money and getting support is another major problem.
It would take NAL almost a decade to see the light at the end of the tunnel. NAL began work on its light transport aircraft in right earnest. A civil aviation unit was set up in the early 1990s. It was also decided that the light transport aircraft would be called SARAS. Design studies on the SARAS began to pick up real steam. The SARAS aircraft also briefly became SARAS-Duet when the idea of collaborating with the Russian Design Bureau was considered. But this collaboration could not survive the political upheavals in Soviet Union and later Russia. As SARAS moved to the detailed design phase, NAL decided to acquire the CATIA software. It was a wise move that significantly cut down development time. NAL was further encouraged when the DGCA recognized it as a certified center for civil aircraft design and development. Sadly, the SARAS team suddenly lost Mr. Raj Mahendra. There were changes at the top as Dr. R.A. Mashelkar took over as CSIR's Director General in 1995 and Dr. T.S. Prahlad took over as NAL's Director in 1996. Dr. Prahlad came determined to push the SARAS program vigorously.
I think it is not only me. I knew that NAL had within itself the capability to succeed in this project.
The struggle to win government approval for the SARAS project continued. Finally, in 1998, the tide began turning in CSIR and NAL's favor. The turning point that NAL eagerly awaited was finally round the corner.
The turning point was sometime in 97-98 period when the Technology Development Board was formed. And our DG was an active member of that board. Sir Ramurthy, chairman of the board, really felt this is a worthwhile project to support. That was one turning point. The second turning point was when our minister was here. He said he would support this project and enthused us to go further. That was the second turning point.
In June 1999, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs formally cleared the SARAS project. HAL joined the project as a major partner. The gates had finally opened for SARAS. DST's Technology Development Board released 65 crore rupees for SARAS. A matching amount came from CSIR, HAL and the Ministry of Civil Aviation. CSIR and NAL's vigil was finally over. The SARAS project was now well and truly on. The SARAS approval generated tremendous enthusiasm and unprecedented R&D activity. It was hard work, but also very fulfilling and enjoyable. As the SARAS project moved forward, many more partners joined the team. 600 engineers from over 25 establishments were working together as one force. The synergy of Team SARAS was unbelievable.
It's fun. It's fun if everything goes well. And if things go wrong, it can be quite a pain also.
Of course, it wasn't smooth sailing all the way.
NAL, when we started, was really not equipped to build an aeroplane of this class, of this size. And we had to set up the system, we had to get the right kind of manpower, we had to have the right infrastructure and do all this, learn a lot when we went along. That was the challenge.
There were many concerns and difficulties.
One was when we were measuring the windscreen edge members. These are really massive pieces. And after the rough machining was over, when we heat treated, when it came out of the bath, the whole thing had warped out of shape, completely out of shape. Second was the windscreen skin forming. When we followed the method normally followed in HAL for the Jaguar and all that, bottom skin was successful. But the top skin we had a lot of problem in getting the right contour.
There were frustrating delays. There were cost overruns. But there was also heartwarming support from DST and from our own leader. As the SARAS project progressed, the team also had to address a vitally important question. Who will test fly SARAS? It was a magical moment when the Indian Air Force agreed to join the SARAS project.
Now, as you know, AST and the NAL are co-located. We are on either side of the same road. And we have been watching the work being done at the design stage and at the manufacture stage on this lovely aircraft. And we have been very, very closely associated. When the aeroplane first time moved onto our tarmac, it looked very good. It was the first transport aircraft. It was a great experience for us in AST.
There was only one missing link in the jigsaw puzzle. The project needed an expert who would become the crucial link between the SARAS development team and ASTE's test pilots. That link would be one of India's finest pilots, Wing Commander P. Ashoka.
But there are some aspects which come in where a little advice and emphasis here and emphasis there, cockpit design for example, instrumentation, sort of control, how should be the grip be there, where should the switches be. These sort of details, some aspects of performance, it's good to consult somebody who knows the game.
SARAS's first big day came on 4th February 2003. Amidst unbelievable enthusiasm and on a lovely winter morning, the Big Bird was rolled out of its hangar for the first time. The SARAS rollout was an emotional moment, but there was still a lot of work to do. For a full year after the rollout, the SARAS was subjected to a wide variety of checks and tests. The pilots and engineers from ASTE began to interact closely with their NAL colleagues. The most active participant in these meetings usually was Squadron Leader K.K. Venugopal. Very soon, with Wing Commander R.S. Makkar, he would have to take SARAS up in the skies for the first time. The SARAS test program looked at every engineering subsystem in great detail. A lot of time was spent studying the SARAS avionics system.
There was no doubt in my mind when it was in August of 2002. I was called to, May of 2002. I was called to participate in the review test for the avionics system. I went and had an interaction with Mr. Murthy. He was the head of ALD and he was also in charge of avionics system. And I saw, and I was quite amazed because all aspects of the avionics system had been integrated. It was, the looms were as it would be on the aeroplane, and it was actually to scale. The layout had already been there, a mock-up was ready, and testing had been so complete that I really didn't have anything to say. I found that it was an extremely professional job that had been done. And the moment I saw the avionics system, I had no doubts in my mind that this aeroplane is going to fly.
The test pilots were slightly handicapped because there was no SARAS simulator available.
But the real preparation came when we started taking up the ground runs. So SARAS did not have the benefit of a simulator. So we had to prepare ourselves and be absolutely comfortable. So we elected to complete and carry out all the ground runs ourselves.
So they used the Dornier 228 as the surrogate aircraft in their test trials.
We also used a Dornier as a surrogate aircraft on which all the tests that we were supposed to do on the SARAS, we first did it on the Dornier because it's of the same class. So combination of all these aspects I think went about in preparing us for the first flight.
The adventure continued. The SARAS engine test was successfully completed. Finally, on 16th April 2004, SARAS taxied out for its first low-speed taxi trial. The first flight was now just a month away. last SARAS high-speed taxi trial was completed on 20th May 2004. After this trial, the DGCA formally cleared SARAS for its first flight. The SARAS was finally ready to fly. The action now shifted to the telemetry tower and room. Sitting in this room, the flight management team would be in constant touch with the test pilots and monitor every aspect of the first flight.
Tango strength 5. Tango Tower taken 108 established on
Of the flight director, this is from the administration point of view. He has to clear the next test point, as they call it. So that there has to be one person who has to give the go-ahead for the next point and use his judgment and experience to say that, okay, that's fine, you can go ahead. Because when you are doing flight testing, you get some results which you didn't expect.
On 28th May 2004, the full SARAS team met to review the first flight plan. Every aspect of the flight test plan was discussed in great detail. The pilots, without any trace of emotion, announced that they were now fully prepared to fly.
I had been with the team all along, and there was nothing. It was just another day's work as far as we were concerned.
The big day had finally come. As the pilots made their pre-flight checks, the tension was palpable. The first flight was now only a few minutes away. As the test pilots entered the aircraft, they received warm words of encouragement from their commandant.
The level of confidence is directly related to the preparatory work that has gone. Now we in AST for last 3 years, before the flight, were closely associating with the designers and also thereafter at the manufacturing stage. And our pilots had felt and touched the aircraft in every system at different stages. The preparation level for the first flight has to be 110%. And that 110% preparation has actually taken.
The SARAS engines roared as the aircraft taxied out and moved to the main runway. At 8:20 a.m., Squadron Leader Venugopal sought the flight test director's permission to begin rolling. Seconds later, the SARAS was finally airborne. It was a magical moment.
It was a momentous day. I'll never forget it because not every pilot, every test pilot gets an opportunity to fly the prototype first flight in his life. I think I was inordinately fortunate to get this. It was a normal routine action as far as we were concerned. Self and Max, both of us got into the aeroplane. We were seen off by the crew, and we started up. Engine parameters were all normal. Engine was beautiful. Response was good. The temperatures were nice. Weather was beautiful, like it is today, nice and sunny. And we taxied out. We found that the two vehicles that invariably chase us were with us. So we had done this so many times. So at no stage during the taxiing out, the weight of that, the gravity of the situation kind of ever it came on me. Went hardly about 15-20 kilometers south and we went further east. It is normal procedure because we can't land the aeroplane off a short approach. We had to do a long straight.
At 8:45 a.m., SARAS, accompanied by 2 IAF aircraft, prepared to land. An instant later, SARAS landed. The mood after the first flight was euphoric. There was loud applause, there were handshakes and hugs. Champagne corks popped open. The Indian tricolour was waved with pride and joy. Dr. B.R. Pai, NAL's director, was visibly delighted. The air was rent with the beautiful music of success.
Till the end, we are the champions.
The test pilots were relieved. The first flight is always a very severe test.
Flying an aeroplane for the very first time. That type of aeroplane, having never been flown before, is a thing very special because you have, other than ground estimates based on calculations and judgment and whatever, of course wind tunnel testing and all that, there's awful lot of data available on ground, but you don't quite know how much of it will be precisely what we expect in the air.
It was a sense of happiness, elated, sense of accomplishment, maybe a job well done.
And Professor Narasimha, who waited 15 years to see the SARAS fly, was overjoyed.
Overjoyed. I was in fact very happy. It's a landmark in the history of Indian civil aeronautics because it demonstrates that India has ambitions in making civil aeronautics.
Dr. Prahlad, who led the SARAS program so skillfully, could hardly contain his joy.
Well, it is very difficult to describe in concrete words. It is something inside you felt, oh, what a great thing. Something that we have done so many years ago.
The successful SARAS flight was widely hailed in the media, but this was only the beginning. The road ahead was going to be long and difficult. The SARAS flew again on 7 June and 19 July. The SARAS undercarriage was retracted for the first time during the third flight. The flight test program continued in August with flights on 18th, 19th and 20th August 2004.
So basically as a pilot we are taught from the day one to handle all emergencies. We have our actions taped up and we are prepared for any eventuality.
Both the test pilots were now coming to terms with the aircraft.
I found that the aeroplane was very responsive. Normally transport aeroplanes don't have that kind of response. It's only a fighter that follows your input. Here we found that the aeroplane following each input.
The SARAS inaugural flight took place on 22nd August 2004. A large and distinguished gathering, including the Minister of State for Science and Technology, was present to witness this flight. Despite some turbulence, the test pilots flew straight and low, much to everyone's delight.
Once we lined up, opened power, as I would say, the noise level was slightly less as compared to other aircraft. The acceleration was good. In no time, we were touching about 70 knots, 80, 100, 105. We unstuck. This was a great feeling, actually.
The successful inaugural flight evoked great jubilation and pleased every Indian. SARAS has now passed its first test. SARAS does indeed appear to be a very good aircraft.
It's got a reasonably good cockpit, comfortable cockpit. It's got reasonably good visibility. It's the right sort of size to be cockpit. It's not a very huge one. So it's endearing to the pilot that way, the moment you look at it. And it has got a moderate, modest performance, not a high-speed aeroplane. Very nice engines. Very nice engines. Cockpit instrumentation is good. Excellent. I think generally seating comfort and the view and now the ground control after some improvements of course is good. And a nice little aeroplane in the stars.
But there are sterner challenges ahead.
The first flight gives the confidence to the manufacturer and so much more to the designer and the pilot that aeroplane is safe and can get airborne safely. So many more milestones have still to be achieved, but the manner in which everybody is working together with synergy, I have no doubt that we are going to succeed and we are going to succeed quickly.
The second prototype has to be readied. The flight test schedule will be extremely rigorous.
Start the real hardcore flight testing, where we get data from each flight and analyze data and then go towards certification.
The biggest challenge ahead is to ensure that SARAS is successfully certified by DGCA.
Expect the later half of 2007, another 2.5 years, because I had to depend a lot on the second prototype also for the certification flights.
Thereafter, SARAS will have to be aggressively marketed.
I think it's getting to be in place. It's not yet completely in place because civil aviation poses different challenges. First place, if you make an aircraft, you can't ask the airlines to fly. It's not like, see, in some of these projects, in principle there's a launch customer, which is the Indian aircraft. In this case, we may not have a launch customer.
The dream of seeing hundreds of SARAS aircraft flying in Indian skies is still a few years away. But we will get there. SARAS has proved once again that when India is determined, it always succeeds.
I would like to see hundreds of them fly in Indian and other skies.